Now, over December, game weeks are coming thick and fast, but don't worry, I've got you covered with the ultimate transfer targets video today, where, of course, we're going to be looking at the players you need to be buying, selling, and giving you all the best data to make your own decisions as well. Now, before we dive into today's video, of course, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 11,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it is only possible with your guys' help. Of course, as always with these transfer targets videos, I like to take a look at just the next game week coming up for projected data in terms of clean sheets and goals. Then, of course, in a little while, we will be using the 11ify data to look a little bit more further forward at the next 5 game weeks. Of course, game week 14, do remember, is going to be a mid-week round. It will take place on Tuesday. The deadline will be at 6 o'clock. So, of course, that's the first big one. Second, of course, I will be live for that deadline as well. So, like I said, if you are new around here, you want your team reviewing, maybe you've got a few questions you want to ask me as well, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button with bell notifications on as well. So, let's dive in to these fixtures then. Obviously, looking at it, Chelsea-Southampton is the big standout fixture, to be honest. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson as a potential option as well. Some very, very decent options coming up for Chelsea over the next few weeks as well in terms of fixtures. So, yeah, definitely a lot of people are going to be jumping on Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson for that one. Liverpool away at Newcastle, it's not the worst fixture either. So, if you can't get to Cole Palmer, Salah is still a pretty decent option as well. Manchester City go up against a pretty resolute Nottingham Forest. One of the best sides so far this season for XG conceded. So, it might be a difficult test for them. Obviously, they're still yet to play as I am filming this on Saturday evening. Villa Brentford looks like that could be a really, really good game. Both teams really struggling to kind of defend, but both are very, very capable of scoring plenty of goals. Obviously, we've got another game with the new Manchester United manager as well. How that one's going to fare, we don't know. And then 2 really tasty ties on Thursday as well, where again, I do feel like there could be a lot of goals happening in this mid-game week round, to be honest. You know, a lot of defences not looking overly great. Again, we've had another weekend where there hasn't really been any clean sheets so far. So I do think when you are using these transfers, it is probably best to be looking at attackers and midfielders, in my personal opinion. I think maybe swapping around the 4.5 million defenders isn't probably going to get you much in return, to be honest, because as we're seeing across the Premier League, season on season, there are less and less clean sheets every year. That means less and less points for defenders. And it just seems like, you know, maybe using these transfers to utilise and pick up better attackers is probably going to be a better use of the free transfer for me personally. But let me know what you think of that one down in the comment section. Like I said, probably the big fixture for the week from an FPL perspective is going to be that Chelsea-Southampton game on Wednesday. And of course, do remember, it is a mid-week game week. That means that the deadline is on 6 o'clock on Tuesday. Right, let's head on into the 11ify data then. Taking a look first at the projected clean sheets for the next 5 game weeks. Arsenal, while I'm filming this, they are currently playing and it is currently sat at 0-0. But of course, the clean sheets for the next few weeks are looking really, really good. So again, even if, you know, they don't look great against West Ham, I still think it's definitely worth some investment. Obviously, Gabriel being in the lineup as well does give me a lot more confidence going in and backing this Arsenal back line. Do be wary, though, that they do have 2 extra fixtures outside of already the busy Premier League schedule. They've got another Champions League round next midweek, and then, of course, they have the EFL Cup, I believe, on the 18th or the 19th of December as well. Brighton are up there, and, you know, they do have some decent fixtures on paper, but as we saw, I think in the game on Friday, they are still quite a fragile defence. Van Heck, for me personally, is going to be the one that you are looking for from a cheap goalkeeper perspective. Of course, Verbergen is there if you need him. Chelsea are my favourite team to be looking to invest in if I was to pick up any defensive assets. Levi Colwill at 4.5 million for me feels like the correct pick. Decent fixtures all the way up until 29 as well, so I would be looking for me personally to invest in that Chelsea backline. Some decent fixtures. They've not been the best defence so far this season, but hopefully some improvements. Newcastle's are okay, but again, we saw their defensive frailties today with a late goal conceded. Commiserations to everybody that went for Lewis Hall. Bournemouth, again, this is what I mean. Teams aren't really keeping too many clean sheets. And as we can see, once we get past, obviously, the top teams that are obviously challenging for the title this season, we kind of get no real kind of standout teams, to be honest. And Bournemouth are another one that fit in that category. The player that I've obviously been recommending to people is Kirkes. He went and got a goal today as well, so I do feel quite confident about that one. There's a few people in the deadline stream, and obviously that one has worked out. West Ham, interestingly, are about to go on this absolutely incredible fixture run over the next 5 to 6 fixtures. So again, might be worth a little bit of investment. Maybe somebody like Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a Kilman. Obviously, maybe if you're on a wild card as well, Fabianski is going to be a decent bet over that period as well. Let's move on to the projected goals then. Again, coming from 11ify. And again, if you want to go and check it out, I will leave a link in the description. Cities are actually pretty decent over the next couple. So maybe keeping Erling Haaland might be the play. Obviously, if you've still got him in your team, I do feel like this week, game week 13, was the week to sell him ahead of the Liverpool fixture. Now I feel like you maybe just hold out through the Forest, through the Palace fixtures as well. Palace are still looking pretty shaky, to be honest, as well. Liverpool's are okay over the next few, but of course, the big standout for match day 14, I highlighted it, it is going to be Chelsea. Cole Palmer. I think the way that Southampton defend, and while I was watching the game as well, they put a graphic up, did Sky, and it was basically like Southampton have had the most errors from passing out the back, most errors something or other, and then it was like gifted possession away most as well. So if Chelsea want to win this game, they need to have the high press, people like Nicholas Jackson trying to win the ball back, Cole Palmer, and I do feel like they have a lot of energy, and they're pretty decent at pressing, this Chelsea side as well, so that could be really beneficial for them, especially with the way that, you know, Russell Martin and Southampton definitely line up their side as well. Newcastle and Spurs pretty even over the next few as well. But I think, you know, with Isak potentially being a little bit of a doubt, probably wouldn't go there. Brighton, they've had their decent fixture now, and as you can see, there's still some okay, decent ones. So the people like Mitoma, João Pedro, definitely worth some consideration. 14 and 15 for Aston Villa are great, by the way. So maybe if you are looking for a replacement, of course, for Alexander Isak, who did go off injured in the first half, maybe Ollie Watkins could be your man over this period. Bournemouth are up next as well. A player that I've kind of been suggesting to people. I know my dad's picked him up. It is Evan Nielsen. Some decent projected goals. Interestingly, he was the first player to win 3 penalties in a game today. I'm not going to recommend Justin Kluivert either. I think with the winger positions and the amount of rotation we've already seen with Iriola, I probably wouldn't be looking to go there for me personally. And then, of course, we do have Brentford as well. Their fixtures do start to get a little bit more difficult, but the projected goals aren't terrible. So we will be talking a little bit more about Brian Mbeumo and Visser and what the plan is to go and do with them over the next few weeks. The final team I wanted to point out, of course, is West Ham. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick in terms of their projected goals. So people like Jared Bowen, maybe Kudos as well with him back from suspension, could be decent options for that game week. And then the final teams I wanted to suggest that you probably want to be looking to move away from: Fulham, Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace. If you've got any of these attackers in your team, even Everton as well also fit into that category. If you've still got Dominic Calvert-Lewin flying around as well, probably worth getting rid of. That was the data side. Now let's head on into some transfer picks. First up, let's talk about the 2 Brighton players that a lot of people are looking to bring in this week. If we already look at the early transfers, a lot of people are bringing in both of these guys, and it makes complete sense. Brighton are about to go on this absolutely fantastic run over the next 5 to 6 fixtures. They're a really, really positive attacking side, and they are a joy at times to go and watch. And I've had quite a few questions on Twitter already asking me, is Mitoma going to be worth it? So let's first off start with him. And I said this in my deadline stream, right? And I'm still sticking with it. I don't think Mitoma is the same player that he was under De Zerbi. When De Zerbi was the manager, everything went through Mitoma, and you could clearly see he was the main talisman and probably the player. When fit and available, he should be the one that you're going and buying. I don't think he had a bad performance on Friday, but overall for me personally, he doesn't feel like he's at the same level he was a few years ago. Now this is he's actually not got over 1 expected goal involvement in 1 game so far this season. As well, to go with that, this was the 2nd highest expected goal involvement he's had in a game. The other one was against Ipswich. Now, he does have a newly promoted Leicester, who still looked very, very woeful coming up as well. So that could be another fixture that he does go and get it. But in terms of his overall data, and considering the amount of minutes he does play, it's not really like matching up too much for me to make like an investment into Mitoma for me personally. It probably would be having to take somebody out for, like, you know, Brian Mbeumo to Mitoma. And do I really feel that's probably going to be worth it? Not for me personally. Now, I do think his minutes are a lot more secure than a lot of the other Brighton players, you know, the Reuters, the João Pedros, the Danny Welbecks. I do feel like his minutes are really, really secure. If you look at it, there's only been one game so far this season he's not played above 85 minutes, and that was 30 minutes against Manchester City. Every other one, he has played pretty much close to the full 90 minutes, or even the 90 minutes as well. So minutes do look secure, but of course, it is over this busy festive period, and there will always be some players that will be dropped and rotated, and Mitoma could definitely be one of those players. So I am a little bit hesitant because I feel like he's more a system player rather than, of course, being an absolute, you know, must buy this game week. But I still think if you did want to invest into him, the fixtures are there. He's still decent and playing for a pretty good attacking side as well. João Pedro, Friday night was really, really disappointing for people that obviously went and brought him in, but we all know what he's capable of, to be honest. That was, again, the lowest expected goal involvement in a game for him so far this season. Maybe Southampton figured out, maybe he was playing a little bit of a different role as well. We saw him at times kind of lingering in the left-back position, which was a little bit weird, but maybe that was just a one-off tactical thing. That is something to potentially be wary of, though. Of course, if that is further going forward. Again, there was an early substitution around the 72nd minute. Again, maybe that was just protecting him. Obviously, he is still coming back from an injury. Of course, there's a lot of games coming up. And Hutzler really, really likes this man. He spoke about him quite a lot in his press conferences, obviously giving him a lot of praise within them. So I do feel like he's still guaranteed starts. But whether or not he's going to be probably still coming off around the 60th, 70th minute is my concern with him. But the fixtures are definitely there. He is very, very capable of producing some absolute moments of magic. We've seen that already from him so far this season. Maybe it was a one-off, a little bit of a blip. Decent fixtures still coming up. So I do still think he is a good investment, especially if you've got forwards that are, you know, maybe having more difficult fixtures. You're looking at the likes of Chris Wood, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, if you've still got him. That I think, you know, João Pedro still could be a decent replacement for these guys because the fixtures are there, and I am somebody that always likes to invest in players with decent fixtures. But I do think both of these players could see some early substitutions or maybe some rotation, so just be a little bit wary of that one. But I feel like most players over this busy festive period are going to be kind of involved in some sort of rotation or early substitution, regardless really of who they are for their side. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at two lads that I think a lot of people are going to be weighing up what to do with this week. It is Brian Mbeumo and it is Johan Visser. Both of these guys, I've owned them. Brian Mbeumo obviously from the start. Visser I brought in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I've absolutely loved owning Visser. I think I've had him since around game week 8, game week 9. Absolutely masterful. Of underlying data is decent. The goals, it's just everything. I love watching him. He's an absolutely fantastic player. Now, for me personally, the way my side is structured and the transfers I need to make or want to make, he's probably going to be still sat in here for a few more weeks because the next 3 fixtures, Villa going into this weekend, obviously yet to play in game week 13. I've only got 1 win in the last 7 games. Newcastle, again, another pretty average performance today. Nothing really to light the fire. I think they only had 1 shot in 50 minutes or something like that. That's something I was seeing on Twitter as well. So again, another disappointing performance. Chelsea away I do think will be difficult, but Brentford do have a reputation for beating some of the top sides as well and do obviously alter their formations and positions and stuff like that. And on the counter-attack, Visser very much could be a great player. The concern, of course, with Johan Visser is at last weekend he came off early for Thiago around the 72nd minute. This week he kind of didn't and stayed down the middle and Thiago came on the left. So I'm unsure whether or not Thiago is, of course, going to be impacting Visser's minutes going forward. I do think, you know, he will have more minutes as the season does progress because Brentford have spent a huge amount of money on him. Of course, they are going to be looking to get him playing games fairly regularly, but I do think like Johan Visser is still going to be the starting striker, especially for this next few weeks. Again, though, with it being a midweek fixture, we might see, again, more rotation. But I probably would be starting to look towards the exit door. I don't think the fixtures are as bad as some people are suggesting, especially the next 2. But longer term, they're still not a great set of fixtures. So I probably would keep my eyes peeled on that one. Interestingly, if you wanted to keep him for 1 more week, then look into game week 15. I think Evan Nielsen would be the ideal replacement. Great set of fixtures coming up for Bournemouth there. And then they've got Ipswich in game week 15 as well. A right plum to be going and picking him up for. And Mbeumo, as you can see, like the data over the past 5 has taken an absolute nosedive. So has the points as well. Probably a little bit unfortunate not to have picked up an assist today, but that's the way the game works. Of course, if the pass isn't obviously going to be the direct target or who he was actually aiming for, they don't usually give it. That's kind of been the rule. There's been plenty of other players that have missed out on points like that, but yeah, that's to clear that one up. But yeah, there's definitely been a drop off in terms of his performances in recent weeks, but going into the festive period where I know there's going to be rotation, I know players are going to be dropped, does it seem like a sensible decision to be selling somebody off who plays 90 minutes pretty much consistently, is on penalties, and plays for a very, very good attacking side? Brentford are the entertainers of the Premier League this season. They're one of the best sides, especially at home, to be watching so far this season. So that's where my head's at with Bryan Mbeumo. The data has fallen off a cliff, and he's not looking like the same player he was, obviously, probably 1 to 2 months ago. But at the same time, selling a player over the busy festive period that plays 90 minutes, is on penalties, does feel a little bit dodgy to me. It does feel a little bit dodgy. But if you are obviously kind of made your mind up, you're going to sell Bryan Mbeumo this week, don't worry, I have got some replacements lined up for you. Obviously, we spoke about Mitoma. That, you know, we'll have a little bit more of a deep dive into him here. But yeah, these are kind of the assets I would be looking at, of course, if I was to replace Bryan Mbeumo, either in 14 or, of course, in game week 15 as well. Jarrod Bowen is playing at the time of recording, and he, for me, is my #1 pick that I would be looking to go for. Of course, this is all dependent on how he gets on in the Arsenal game, as long as he gets through it unscathed and everything good like that. But the fixtures coming up for West Ham, obviously we saw it with the 11ify data, there is an uptick over the next few weeks. I think, yeah, Jarrod Bowen, everybody knows I've got a real soft spot for Jarrod Bowen. He always ends up in my team every single season. He is pretty much like a talisman. I don't think he's definitely confirmed on penalties. I know he's took 1 so far this season, so maybe he is back on penalties under Lopetegui. 7 goal involvement so far this season. The expected goal involvement is actually the lowest on this list, which was a little bit surprising, but then I considered all the other players that are on this list, some of the fixtures they've got, some of the teams they play for, and of course their minutes compared to Jarrod Bowen's as well. Maddison obviously has been benched a few times and stuff like that. Mitoma is seeing decent minutes, so that one's kind of, I would probably say, a little bit underwhelming for Jarrod Bowen on that side. Mbeumo has been playing for a very decent Bournemouth side. And then Anthony Gordon, again, not really seeing like some minutes, missing games for injury and stuff like that. So that probably would balance itself out if they played the same amount of minutes as well. But yeah, West Ham, they haven't really looked good under Lopetegui, but this could be the run that sets them up, of course, with some great fixtures on the horizon. Projected points as well, not too bad. The second highest on this list, so the Fantasy Football Hub model also fancying him. Interestingly, Bryan Mbeumo is at 14.3, so there's not really too much disparity between any of the picks that I'm suggesting, or just holding on to Bryan Mbeumo for that reason. James Maddison, a real interesting one, to be honest, because he was absolutely phenomenal against Manchester City. We all know he is very capable, has the best goal involvement on this list, the best expected goal involvement on this list, but then, of course, the worst predicted points. I do imagine that is Fantasy Football Hub, obviously factoring in the recent benchings and not really updating. Of course, we'll have to wait and see if he does play for Spurs tomorrow. That, of course, is the big concern, especially over this busy festive period. Picking up a player that will be seeing some benching, some early substitutions and stuff like that, and has dips in and out of form. So I wanted to include Maddison because I know I was going to get some questions asked about it, but probably not for me. I'd rather keep Bryan Mbeumo than pick up James Maddison. Mitoma, again, we spoke through him earlier in the video, the pros, the cons of going for him. Like I said, I don't feel he's the same talismanic man that he was under De Zerbi, and has kind of seen a little bit of a different role. Mbeumo probably would be one that if you wanted to keep Bryan Mbeumo for 1 more week, then like I said, with Visser and Evan Nielsen, that's probably going to be the period. Bournemouth have been great so far this season. Genuinely one of the most improved sides within the Premier League. If you look at the expected goals and expected goals conceded, they're just looking a really, really good side. And I feel like when they're about to go on this good run in game week 15, I would like at least one, maybe even potentially two Bournemouth players over that period, because they're playing some really, really exciting attacking brand of football. We saw that today. I know they won the penalties, but overall, the style of play that we've seen so far this season. And let's not forget, this team has beat both Manchester City and Arsenal already this season. I don't feel has been getting enough kind of plaudits for what this team is actually doing. Mbeumo, of course, is going to be a key part of that one. He's actually had a break as well this week, which means that he probably over the festive period is not going to see as much rotation as, of course, some of the other players as well, with him having this week off due to a suspension. So again, that's a nice thing. He can go out and pick up as many yellow cards as he wants now as well. Anthony Gordon got himself an assist today for an own goal. Again, he probably would be one that you want to be going and picking up around game week 15, because that Liverpool at home fixture, not too appetising considering Liverpool's strong defensive record so far this season. But for me personally, again, I've probably got a little bit of a soft spot for Anthony Gordon. I do think though, with Alexander Isak now out, does make me very, very hesitant to go there, you know, with him obviously going off injured today. Of course, if it's just like a little bit of a knock and he should be back for the midweek rounds, then that does make Gordon more appealing. But when Gordon plays in the 9, I'm not overly... I watch the performances and I don't feel like he's overly going to be involved. But of course, there are some decent fixtures on the horizon for Newcastle post game week 15, very similar to Bournemouth. So again, we probably do need to be looking at this team as somewhere that we probably should be looking to invest in over the next few weeks. Of course, my ideal replacement for Bryan Mbeumo, I think it is going to be Jarrod Bowen. Of course, like I said, if he does make it through unscathed through the Arsenal game, that, for me personally, is going to be my pick. Like I said, I've got history with Jarrod Bowen. I know what the man is capable of, and the next 5 fixtures are absolutely delicious. But of course, if you do want to keep the likes of Vissa and Mbeumo, I do think it could make sense for the next 2 fixtures at least, with them seeing decent minutes. And if you are worried about some of these other players that I've suggested, because they're not like kind of world beaters anybody on this list. So yeah, I get it. I get it if you want to keep them. I do, because the minutes are quite secure for both those players, whereas everybody else on this list could see some benchings and could see a little bit of rotation over the next few weeks. Right, before we finish up today's video, as always, I like to look at the predicted points for the next 5 game weeks. Of course, this is from Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to go and check it out, there's a link in the description. No real shock at kind of, I would say, the top 4 players. We all know that these are probably going to be towards the top of this list every single time. Salah, Haaland, Palmer, Saka. Isak obviously now out potentially, so he's kind of been excluded. Cunha, I know I've not mentioned him, but him and Strand Larson for the next 4 fixtures, still both decent players to be going picking up over that time period. Watkins, we saw with the 11FI data, the next 2 game weeks could be really, really interesting from an Aston Villa attacking standpoint as well. Nicholas Jackson, is my top replacement for Alexander Isak if the injury is more long-term. Like I said, the Chelsea fixtures are delicious. Casting our minds back as well, we saw that Chelsea were the top team for projected goals in game week 14 as well, so that one could be a feast fest. But of course, he is on 4 yellow cards. He could even actually pick up his suspension in game week 13 as well, with him yet to play as well. João Pedro and Semenyo also make this list as well. Like I said, both of those lads could be decent pickups, playing for pretty decent attacking sides, with both of them coming into decent fixtures as well. So could be, you know, nice differentials to be going and picking up over that period. Right, that is going to conclude today's video. Like I said, if you did enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 14.